Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Quiet Riddle. I appreciate you stopping by our little spot to chill out with us today. By the way, if you like the music on this channel, go to our YouTube music channel at DrizzlerWorks Music, or just click on the link in this video. Your support helps other good people like yourself. So with that said, mass psychosis. It sounds dramatic, almost like something out of a dystopian movie or a history textbook describing the downfall of a past civilization. But the truth is that mass psychosis is not a myth, not an exaggeration, and not a rarity. It has happened before. It is happening right now somewhere in the world. And unless people learn to recognize it, question it, and resist it, it will happen again, often quietly and subtly, shaping entire societies without the majority ever realizing what's going on. Mass psychosis refers to a collective movement into delusion, fear, irrationality, and emotional instability. It doesn't require everyone to lose touch with reality, only enough of the population to shift the social atmosphere. When that tipping point is crossed, sanity stops being about truth and starts being about conformity. People don't think critically anymore. They react. They don't question authority. They absorb it. And they don't look inward for stability. They look outward for permission. To understand how entire societies fall into psychological darkness, we have to start with the foundation: fear. Fear is the spark that ignites the entire process. Human beings are wired to respond to threats, real or imagined, with intense emotional energy. If a population is overwhelmed with fear long enough, reason begins to erode. People stop analyzing situations and start clinging to anything that promises safety, certainty, or control. Political leaders throughout history understood this. So did tyrants, cult leaders, and propagandists. A frightened population becomes malleable. But fear alone is not enough. For mass psychosis to take root, people must also become isolated. When individuals feel cut off, socially, emotionally, or psychologically, they become easier to influence. Loneliness amplifies fear and strips people of the stabilizing effect of community. When you feel alone, unsure, and overwhelmed, your mind becomes vulnerable. You start looking for guidance, for clarity, for someone to tell you what's real and what's not. This is where the third factor appears: constant confusion. A population that cannot tell truth from falsehood becomes dependent on whatever voice seems the most confident. Maybe that voice is an institution. Maybe it's a charismatic leader. Maybe it's a social movement, an influencer, a political group, or a media outlet. The more chaotic the information landscape becomes, the more people look for a simple narrative, often the one delivered with the most emotional punch rather than the most evidence. And once the narrative is accepted, mass psychosis begins to grow. People internalize the beliefs, repeat them, defend them, and eventually enforce them. The mind shifts from asking, "Is this true?" to "Is this allowed?" Questioning the narrative becomes dangerous. Dissent becomes a threat, and so the population starts policing itself. This is one of the strangest parts of mass psychosis. Once the delusion spreads, people begin enforcing it on each other with an intensity that often exceeds the original authorities. Neighbors turn on neighbors. Friends stop speaking. Families divide. Suddenly, the wrong opinions are treated like moral crimes. Social pressure becomes psychological warfare. People are shamed, canceled, isolated, or vilified, not because they're wrong, but because they're inconvenient. This internal policing creates a feedback loop. As more people conform, the illusion of consensus grows. The population begins to believe everyone thinks this way, so it must be true. Humans are social creatures, and when our environment tells us that a particular belief is universal, it becomes incredibly difficult to resist, even if that belief is irrational. So what exactly pushes a population from fear and confusion into full-blown psychosis? The answer lies in the human need for meaning. When people feel overwhelmed by uncertainty, they will accept almost any explanation that gives them a sense of order. A collective delusion is appealing because it offers a simple worldview. It tells people who to blame, who to fear, who to trust, and how to interpret the chaos around them. It's not the truth that seduces people, it's the structure. And once people reorganize their identities around a narrative, they will defend it even when it harms them. This is why societies throughout history embrace destructive ideologies, justified cruelty, or participated in actions that, in hindsight, seem insane. When you're inside the psychosis, it doesn't feel like madness. It feels like righteousness. People believe they're saving society, protecting their families, or defending justice, even while contributing to collective harm. This leads to the next stage, moral inversion. During mass psychosis, good becomes bad, and bad becomes good. Truth becomes suspicious, and lies become noble. Independent thinking becomes a threat, while blind obedience becomes a virtue. And perhaps the most disturbing part is that people experiencing mass psychosis genuinely believe they are morally superior. They see themselves as enlightened, compassionate, or heroic, even when behaving with cruelty or intolerance. But despite how powerful mass psychosis can be, it doesn't appear spontaneously. It's cultivated. It requires leaders, systems, and institutions that benefit from control. When those in power discover that fear, isolation, and confusion grant them influence, they begin shaping the environment to maintain it. They don't have to convince everyone, just enough people to create pressure, normalize the irrational, and silence the resistant. So how do individuals protect themselves? The first step is awareness. Recognizing when fear is being weaponized helps you regain control of your mind. The second step is staying connected to others. A strong community, online or in person, limits isolation and counters the feeling of helplessness. The third step is intellectual humility, being willing to question your beliefs, examine narratives, and seek truth instead of emotional comfort. And finally, individuals must reclaim their responsibility to think for themselves. The moment you outsource your perception of reality, you open the door to psychological manipulation. Mass psychosis ends when enough people choose clarity over conformity, courage over comfort, and truth over collective pressure. It ends when individuals refuse to participate in the delusion, even if it means standing alone for a while. Throughout history, every oppressive movement eventually fell, not because the system crumbled on its own, but because people stopped feeding it with their fear. At the end of the day, society's sanity depends on personal sanity. If you keep your mind grounded, calm, rational, and connected to reality, you become a stabilizing force in a world that may be losing its footing. And the more people choose that path, the harder it becomes for mass psychosis to take hold. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you. God bless you. See you in the next video.